What up, y'all? This is Brandon Williams here again with an amazing Two Lost Conversations with just the incomparable, multifaceted, multi-hyphenate BINX here. How you doing?
Hey, B-Dog.
I'm so stoked. We were chatting earlier, and I'm so excited about your journey because I think we have a parallel. Like you are not just an artist. You are a entrepreneur. You are a visionary. You have themes. You have brands. I'm just really stoked to talk to you, and I'm really excited. So let's get into it. I mean, we were talking earlier. You're from South Africa. You know, how is that being an artist from South Africa? Obviously, there's so many different connotations behind what that even means, what the style of music. You're obviously a pop artist, and I know you reside in Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, which I love. Yay. I'm from LA. But yeah, just how has that made you into the person you are? How has that defined your sound or things that you've learned from being from there? And then how has, just that experience been just coming here and being from there?
Yo, that is a loaded question. That's a good first starting question. I would say that, first and foremost, I would not be the artist I am if I wasn't born in South Africa, if I didn't go through the experiences that I've been through. A lot of the stories that I have growing up in South Africa are so infused into my lyrics and my songs and my heritage. So I'm also known as the African Bee, which was something. So long story short, when I was performing in New York, I was trying to differentiate myself from different artists, and I would dress like a bumblebee. It was part of my branding. And when people couldn't remember what my name was, they'd be like, well, where's that South African Bee? So I actually got the name dubbed from audiences around New York, the live music circuit. But the African Bee, stems from my heritage, where I'm from. And everything about South Africa, I almost feel emotional talking about it because, when you're in a place, you don't appreciate it as much as you do until you leave, right? It's the same concept of when you don't appreciate somebody as much as you would until they leave. And, I was obsessed with American culture. We're so Americanized in South Africa. We watch your movies, we listen to your music, read your books. I was so obsessed with American culture that I was kind of not living and learning the way that I am now about my country and my culture. And that's just how life goes. I'm so nostalgic now, so I think about it a lot. But I grew up speaking Xhosa as well, which is a traditional South African language. It's a click language. I grew up in a very small town called Elliot, which is there's not much going on there. There's no movie theaters, no restaurants. There's just absolutely nothing. It's like a dam, houses. And because we didn't have much in this little hometown of mine, we relied on people and music to entertain us. And so it's so instilled in me to want to become a performer, because all we ever did was just hang out with people, and you just naturally learn how to perform because you have to learn how to entertain people, and there's nothing else to do. There's no technology. We got TV, obviously, and that was how I had my little MTV portal into America, which was where I was like, that's where I'm going. But it has such a significant imprint on me. There's, like I said, I'm infusing it in all my lyrics and everything that I do. I try to honor it as much as I can, as often as I can.
No, that's beautiful. I know I hit you with a loaded question. No, I feel like that's the forefront of what you do, the bee theme. I know you talked about it a little bit, but is the bee a central part of South Africa? Like you said, is it intertwined? And when you tell people that, are they like, whoa, or is it something that you kind of have a subliminal narrative and overarching theme of your music?
Yeah. So this is the thing when you ask me questions, because I'm obviously creative, that I always have 50 different stories that are lining up. So I have to always choose how to reel it in. So to answer the first question, so the bee theme, the bee significance comes from the fact that the bee is such a tiny insect in our world, but it has such a significant role. And I feel like we're all born with such a significant role, and we may not all understand what that role is. And even as I continue to grow up, I'm learning more about what my role is. And my role started as, feeling like entertaining people, making music and performing was something that I needed to do. And I kind of also lost that along the way. And then I started to remember that, bringing joy was such a massive part of my purpose. And I think when we start looking for what our significant role is in the world, and it doesn't have to be anything that looks tremendously significant, right? It could be just bringing somebody joy. It could just be just being the best person that you could be. And so when I look at like the bumblebee, they're not supposed to fly, right? So like a bumblebee, so according to science, like the bumblebee is not supposed to fly, but it does fly. The wings are too small, the body's too big. And that just feels very representative of what my brand is and how my mindset is, where I grew up in such a tiny town in South Africa. Like if I showed you where I grew up, to come here to Los Angeles, like Beverly Hills, is absolutely unfathomable, but it worked and it happened because I don't focus on limits. I don't focus on logic, and that has worked to my advantage. So, you know what I mean? So like, it's such a symbolic thing to me of anything is possible. And so embodying the African bee is just being able to do absolutely anything that you set your mind to. And then to go back to the whole tying into South Africa, because I'm from South Africa, I'm obviously the African bee, but I also have this thing with bees. I was out playing in South Africa when I was a little girl with my brother, and I kid you not, but I stood on a bee. So it wasn't the same bee, obviously, because I think a bee can only sting you one time, but I got stung 3 times in 1 foot within a space of 20 to 30 minutes, because we had this lawn and we had just like flowers all over the lawn, and I'd stung myself, went inside, my mom took care of it. I came back out, stung myself again, went back in, and then the 3rd time it was the weirdest thing. And so ever since then, it was like 3, because 3 was always happening for me in lucky numbers. And so every time I see a bee now, it's a good omen. I actually literally just saw one fly past my window. So, and I mean, it just brings me a sense of luck and excitement every time I see them. So that's the shortest story possible.
No, I mean, that's beautiful. I think it's such a, I have friends who've come from other countries, and it's such a culture shock for people who don't know, who may be watching this. Being in Los Angeles is really hard, especially as an artist. There's just the cultural aspect of coming from Los Angeles, but then there, as an artist and a musician, obviously coming from another country, you might feel like you have a lot to prove. And there's a lot of clickiness here. There's a lot of gatekeeping. How did you even navigate something like that, being from a totally different country and getting acclimated here?
That is such an excellent question, Brandon. Honestly, you hit me right here with that question, because everyone who lives in LA honestly can relate to exactly what you're saying, right? Everybody understands exactly what you're saying. When I moved to New York, first and foremost, New York. So I actually wrote a song called African Heart, and the song talks about, don't let anybody steal your spark. The light that I have, that the positivity that I have, the drive that I have. It was just very like, when I come to America, don't let anybody take that away from you, no matter how competitive it gets, no matter how difficult it gets. Just always remember your roots. Stick to what you know, and be a good person. And funny thing is, so in New York, I was so happy. I had tunnel vision. I had such an amazing circle of friends that I made. I had community. I was so fulfilled. I was so happy. And so when I moved to LA, it was on a whim, because my best friend was like, I want to go to LA. Like, do you want to come and just have a holiday with me? And I was like, sure, let's go. And I came, and a week later, I had about 10 different people telling me, like, you got to move to LA if you want to further your career. You got to be in LA. Like, you can either stay comfortable in New York or you can further your career in LA. And I was like, I was not planning to move. And I turned to her, and she knew exactly what I was thinking. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I have to move to LA. And so I really didn't want to leave. I was so happy where I was. Usually people leave when they're miserable and they need a change. And I left a very comfortable thing that I was working with Live Nation. I was so happy. I was so excited in New York. And then I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to start all over again, because I already moved to America from South Africa, did not know one single human being. And then to start that journey all over again in LA, where I knew absolutely nobody in LA, was just like, what am I doing? I just built something. So when I got to LA, I was the same, excited, driven, hungry. And a couple years in, and it started to take its toll on me. I started to feel all the feels that you feel when you get to LA, the discouragement, the depression, the loneliness, the just feeling defeated all the time, feeling purposeless, just everything that everybody feels when they come here. Everybody comes here with that joy and that excitement, that spark. I came to LA without community, and I was like, you know what, I'm coming here to work, because I had such a good group of friends in New York and we used to hang out all the time. And I was like, okay, I really need to put my head down and work. So I was like, I'm not going to focus on making friends as much as I am going to focus on work. And that was my biggest mistake, because community is the only thing that will see you through anything, I think, in life, no matter what you're pursuing, whether it's any business or not even pursuing business, just to survive Earth, you need community. And then I also went through the period where I didn't even want to release music anymore, because every time I released music, I became so fixated on numbers and validation. Because when you start out, you start with passion, right? And then along the way, it becomes convoluted and you start forgetting why you started. You forget everything of why you love music in the first place. And you start thinking likes, comments, validation,
right,
insecurities of how do you look compared to everybody else? How do you sound compared to everybody else? How are you perceived? And you become obsessed and fixated with numbers, and it's so unhealthy. And I had to do some dramatic work to get out of that space and stop fixating on numbers that I can't control and focusing on numbers that are. So good numbers and bad numbers. And it's something I talk about in the book, of focusing on things you can control. And that's the only way to get yourself back on track.
Let's talk about this amazing journey of how you got into writing this book. I think this book is some of the most amazing stuff put together, because you kind of talk about just your experience, how to build like your music empire and how you survived here. I think it's really important information, but like, what inspires you to make a book?
I know, it's funny because it feels so natural to me, but like it sounds hilarious when you're pursuing an artistic journey. You're like, well, how did that pop into your head? But let me tell you what it was. I know exactly where I was in my house when I opened up my bank account one day and I looked into bank account and I saw a tremendous number and I was like, what? Oh no, I've been scammed. Somebody has put thousands of dollars into my bank account. This is not right. What happened here?
Best scam ever is what happened. The best scam
ever. I was in the most disbelief you could ever. It's one of those things where that moment in my life is parallel to like getting married, to meeting my nephews for the first time, just my mom moving here, like just monumental milestones where I could not fathom, because I've come from very humble beginnings my whole entire life. We've always struggled financially. It's always been just in the way things have been. I don't know a life of having money. So when I saw that, it was the most mind-blowing feeling, because when I looked into it and I realized, oh my gosh, I was just paid through music. I just made a check through music, and a check that I didn't even know existed. So that was even better. It wasn't like something I was expecting. It was one of these things where I was trying to track it down and figure out what had just happened. Like I didn't expect it. I didn't know about it. So that moment, once that had settled in and I tried to sit with it for a while, I was like, that's what I've been waiting for this whole music journey, because I think I could be wrong and people can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that 99.9% of people who make music wish that they could make a living on music, and they wish that they could make money on it, because you don't want to have to work a job you don't want to work. You want to work and make money with your art. Like that's the ultimate goal or dream. I think for me as well. There's a helicopter passing. Hopefully we're okay. And so when I had that feeling, it settled in, and I was like, and then time passed, and then I received another massive life-changing check, and that was through a completely different avenue. And I was like, okay, I've cracked the code. I was like, I figured it out. It just took me 15 years to figure out how to make money through music. And I was like, everybody has to have this feeling at least once in their life, like to feel like you've made, when you feel like you've grinded and grinded and grinded and put in, and your output, because your output is always so much more, your input is so much more significant than what you get out. And so I just really wanted people to have that feeling, to feel like, oh my gosh, all my hard work, all my years of pay, like even if that happened to me one time, obviously I hope that it would never have only happened one time, but just that once off feeling is just something I really wanted to bless every like independent artist with that I possibly could.
That's powerful. That's powerful. As an artist and an author, there's like a juggle you're balancing.
So I will say, so when I was growing up, music has always been number one. I've always just wanted to be an artist. I just want to make music. I want to do it till I'm also old and gray and wrinkly, and I just want to be doing it as long as I possibly can. But I've also always wanted to be a writer and an author, but I never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd write a book about the music industry. Never. I thought it would be about magical unicorns, happy, wonderful witch vibes and spells, not anything to do with factual information. So I will say, I'm holding it here, but I will say, I do not recommend anybody writing a book like this. I don't know what I signed up for. If there's one thing you'll learn about me, the more time you spend with me, is I always attempt to be simple and straightforward, but that's just not who I am. I'm a complex woman. I love to complicate everything in my life. I love to detail everything in my life. So what started out as like, let me just make like the best guide I can make, turned into, no, this has to be the greatest, most helpful, resourceful, educational book of all time. Because, you know, when I was in school, I would have killed for a book like this, because when my dad went to New York once, he came back with a book and it was called All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald S. Passman.
The famous book. Hold on. So this is the book that if you're ever an artist, they'll be like, hey, this is the book you need to read. You're like, oh, okay, this is the book. This is the Bible. Okay, I got to read it. Go ahead.
And to be in South Africa and to get a book from New York by one of the biggest music lawyers of all time was my Bible. I was in heaven. I read it a bajillion times. It was just everything to me. The only thing is, though, and it's to nobody's fault because this is what he knew, and, you know, it was all sort of the major label era of things, and that was sort of the only avenue you could really go as a musician. So when I got that book, it was so helpful, but at the same time, I was studying it and I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to get signed. I'm going to go get a major label deal. So I'm going to move to America, get a major label deal, become a full-blown pop star, bring my family over, and we'll live happily ever after. Like, that's what I'm going to do. 2 years tops. That's what I'm going to do. And obviously everybody knows that is not the way that it goes. And also because my biggest error was putting a timeline on things. I should never have put a timeline, because that's just causing your own misery, because you don't know what life has in store for you. So you can set out and you have to know that you're playing the long game. You're not playing the short game. So that's the biggest thing. But I really focused on major label deal. I was programmed, as a lot of artists I think were, of like, that's the only way forward. And it was because also we didn't really have distribution back then, right? Artists couldn't just drop. I mean, there were avenues. Like I released maybe 2 songs in South Africa, I think. And wow. I don't even remember how I did it. I think somebody must have helped me with it or something. But you couldn't really just put out your music, or people were doing it, but it was so rare. And, you know, so anyway, this book, for the last 15 years of everything that I've learned that I wish I knew back then, is geared towards indie artists of what do you do before you even get to the level of hopefully being offered a record deal? Like, what do you do in the meantime? Because there's so much information out there. We don't know where to focus your attention. Do you know what I mean? There's distribution, there's social media, there's marketing, there's branding, there's sync, there's ads, there's live performance, there's networking, there's so much that you don't know. Okay, in my day, how do I prioritize, especially if you've got a full-time job or a part-time job? What do you do with your hours? Do you go live? Do you perform live every night? Or do you post more on social media? Or do you release more music consistently? Or do you do a little bit of everything? Like, it's so hard to know. And I've struggled because I've never had a team. I've never ever had anybody give me direction. And that's been one of my biggest pain points is, you know, you can't get a manager until you need a manager. You can't get a booking agent until you need a booking agent. And there's so many books that tell you to get all these people on your team, but it's hard to find those people because they're not going to get paid because you're not getting paid. And you have to find people that believe in you. And it's hard to find. I mean, I've definitely had people who've jumped on and jumped off and tried their best when they've had time. But until you can, you know, help pay people, you're on your own, and you got to figure it out. So this book, it was something that I desperately felt like I needed. And I was like, you know what? I have all this information now. What do I do with it? Like, I don't want to just hoard it for myself. I want to be able to give freely. I want, you know, and like you mentioned in LA, there's a lot of gatekeepers, but I mean, in general, right? There's gatekeepers for so much around the world with music or whatever. We don't know how people are doing it. We don't know how they get from A to B to C to D, let alone Z. So this book is definitely like helping you figure out what to do and where to focus your attention and what percentage to focus that attention on each activity.
I love that. Cool. I mean, I think that book is powerful for a number of reasons because, like you kind of mentioned, there's the micro level of artists just knowing what to do in the minutia stage or the pre-signing stage, but even the pre-onboarding team stage, you know.
So I call it the shrimp stage, and I'm like, please nobody take offense. I'm like, there's like the dolphins like jumping up the water. There's the fish, and then I'm like the indie artists were like the little shrimp at the bottom of the ocean. I'm like, please no one take offense. I'm like, it's all I'm saying is we got to work our way up to the top of the ocean. You know, you got to build from the ground up, because that's what people forget. When they hear the word indie artist. I don't know if you know the artist Russ, the hip hop artist.
Oh yeah, I love Russ, of course.
Love Russ. We just watched him live. Amazing. So cool. So we're obsessed with him because he's obviously an indie that's just crushing it, right? But there's his level of indie and there's my level of indie. Do you know what I mean? And when you hear indie, you think everybody's on the same level, but it's like, I'm not selling out stadium concerts right now. You know, he is. He's making millions of dollars off of his work. There's artists that are living comfortably, making their way, doing their thing, and then there's artists that are in his level, but there's also in between that, and there's, like you said, the viral artists that have a little bit more of a platform, and then there's artists who are still trying to crack the 1,000 monthly listener mark.
We're almost at time, but I want to ask, because you're such a wealth of knowledge, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give someone just starting out, like brand new artists, day one artists, like they're starting out, they don't know anything. You can put them in any genre. If you want to make it genre specific, to make it more specific, let's just say they're an artist like you, they look up to you, they're a pop artist.
Okay. One would be, don't put timelines on things. Oh, I have so many, so I'm going to do them very fast. Don't put timeline on things. Let life do what it does. 2, focus your attention on sync. That's, where you can get the most money for your music when you're first starting out. 3, mental wealth is mental wealth and community are the 2 things that will save you and get you exactly where you want to go. If you don't have a support system, you may as well give up now, because you're not going to last. And I won't say that. I'm never going to say that. I won't tell people ever what they will or won't. But I will say that for myself, I wouldn't be where I am without all the people in my life, like my husband, Adam Zaks. He's also known as Maida Adams. Helps teach me how to produce all these things, my family, my friends. And I would say that, the biggest one I would also say is validate yourself, because if you don't learn to validate yourself, you are always going to feel empty, lost, lonely, purposeless. So you really, really need to focus on making sure that you're doing things for you and not for anybody else. And you focus on the creative process and not the outcome, not the numbers, not the accolades, none of that. Don't focus on that. That will come, but stay focused on why you're doing it and enjoying the process.
Come on now. I love that. I think, listen, all those are important. People will love this interview because I think you have such a fresh perspective. You have such it's positive. You know what I mean? Like some people in your experience get jaded. They've seen it all, done it all, experienced it all, kind of know like, hey, this is like how it goes. But I think you have such a fresh perspective, and I think it's dope. But I appreciate you so much. Like,
I appreciate you.
I feel like we could talk for hours. It's been an amazing conversation. It's been a wealth of knowledge. Where can people find you at? Where are the places they can find you at? I know there's some different platforms you're on. Please tell people where they can find you at.
For sure. And I just want to say, Brandon, I really appreciate your questions because they felt really thoughtful and they were some big ones. Like I told you, I can't give you one answer for each because you were asking some really good questions. So to try to answer them concisely. So I really enjoyed chatting with you. So yeah, everyone can find me. Everything is super easy. So if you think of Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars, but with an X, so BINX, all my social media platforms are Binks Official. All my streaming platforms are just BINX, so BINX. And I release music every 4 weeks. I've done so for the last 3.5 years. And so I just had an album drop called Barbie on the 31st of July. And yeah, the new song's already 3 weeks away. So, and then the book is on Amazon. It's called How to Build Your Music Empire by BINX. And, if you like it, if you felt like it brings you any sort of educational information, I would love if you could leave a review. That would be super helpful. That's the best way you can show support. So thank you so much.
Again, appreciate you. This has been an amazing conversation and I will see you next time.
appreciate you, Brandon. Thank you so much.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.